In this lecture, we are going to look at the clear, select and move pivot table functions in Excel. Notice how once we insert a pivot table and we are inside the pivot table, we have two tabs activated at the top. One is called pivot table analyze and second is called design. This might be different in terms of names depending on the Excel version that you are using or even the Excel software that you are using, whether it's a laptop that is a Windows laptop or a PC or it's a MacBook or some other Apple device. So do not worry, the names might be different, but the functions inside it will remain the same. So here you have pivot table analyze and here you have design. Let's look at three functions from the pivot table analyze tab. This pivot table analyze tab and the design tab will be activated and will be visible only if you are inside your pivot table. So if I click outside it to any other cell, I go here or I go here, it will go away. So I will have to go back to my pivot table and activate this again. I'll go to pivot table analyze and now let's have a look at the three different functions called clear, select and move pivot table under the actions section. First, let's look at clear. The clear pivot table function allows you to remove the entire field from a pivot table, that is all the fields, or simply get the filters back to the default level. For example, if I go inside my pivot table and click on clear, it gives me two options. Do you want to clear everything or do you want to clear just the filters? If I click on clear all, it will simply remove everything that I have from all these four boxes. So let's go ahead and click on clear all. As you can see, now my pivot table is set back to the default, that is having nothing, and all the fields that I had in these four boxes have now been brought back to the list here. Nothing is there in these four boxes. Now, if you're wondering, why should we use something like this? Can't we simply click and drag it back to the box here, or I would say the list here? Well, that's absolutely correct. But if you're having a really complex pivot table, having let's say multiple fields in all the four boxes, it is a little bit faster to use the clear button here as compared to individually clicking and dragging each and every item in this list. So in case you're having a lot of items, this might save you on some time. I'll press Ctrl Z to bring back my pivot table. And now let's look at the second option here, which is clear filters. If I click on clear filter, you would expect the filters items from here or the fields from here to go back to the list here. But that is not the case. That is not how it works. If you click on clear filter, it will simply set back both the items to default. So it would simply go here, click and set this to all again and click on OK. For this, it would click on this and set back to all, which is the default state having a pivot table with no filters applied, which means it will keep both the fields in the filters box, but will simply reset it to default, that is having nothing applied. So let's click on clear and click on clear filters. As you can see, now we have both of them still here, but both of them are now set back to all and we have our entire data without any filter. But we still have the option to go here and add a filter in case we want. It has not been removed from our filters box. Coming to the next function that we have, which is select. You can simply click on select and select an element of a pivot table. So you can simply click here and let's say I want to select my entire pivot table. I'll click on entire pivot table and now my entire pivot table is selected. You can also select individual elements of a pivot table by going to select. And let's say I only want to select values. So I'll click on values and now all my values are selected. You can again go to select and select only specific things like labels. I'll click on labels and now all my labels are selected. So in case you want to make individual selections, select function is the way to go. I personally do not want to use the select option while dealing with my data, but in case you want to, you can go ahead. A simpler way to do the exact same thing would be to simply use your cursor like this or even use navigation shortcuts like this. So this is much faster as compared to using your cursor, going to select and then selecting entire pivot table. But in case you want to do it, you can do it. Next, we have move pivot table. So in case you want to move the entire pivot table from one place to another, you can simply click on move pivot table and select the new location. Do you want to have it moved to a new worksheet or existing worksheet? If I click on existing worksheet and let's say click on G cell, this one, which is G1, and click on OK, it will move from your, let's expand this, and move to your. Again, if you want to bring back to the original position, you can go to pivot table analyze, move pivot table, and bring it back to this cell. Click on OK, and there we go. This is better than using simply copying the pivot table like this, something like this, and Control C, going here, and Control V. This method is better because notice how if I forget an item from my pivot table, for example, if I simply copy this much area and paste it somewhere else, forgetting the filters that I have at the top. So if I press Control C, go here and press Control V, notice how this is not a pivot table. I do not have any analyze or design tab for pivot tables at the top. The reason for that is I have simply copied my data. I haven't copied my pivot table because a few elements from it were left to be copied. So instead of doing something like this, I could delete this, select this entire data, Control C, go here, Control V, and now we have a working pivot table here as well. As you can see, we have both the tabs active. So this is something that you can do, or you can simply press Control X, that is for cut, and Control V to paste it here, to move the pivot table from here to here. But I personally use the move pivot table button or the function because I do not have to worry about forgetting an element from my pivot table. You could simply go to a cell, go to analyze and move pivot table to move from one place to another without having to select everything together. So these were the clear, select and move pivot table functions in Excel. That's it for this lecture and I'll see you in the next one.